who is the greatest LCS AD carry of all time? Well, that's easy. It's Doublelift, and it isn't particularly close.
But what about the second best? While consistently underrated, C9's Sneaky seems like the best candidate. He was brilliant across many different rosters, both domestically and internationally. And besides, if everyone always says you're underrated, how underrated are you really?
The LCS doesn't have a Hall of Fame, but if it did, these two players are presumed slam dunks and likely both first ballot Hall of Famers. So who completes the big three of LCS players who've excelled at the ADC position? What blend of results, consistency, accolades, and skill could possibly measure up to the LCS GOAT and the player that was so persistently on his tail? In many ways, Sneaky feels like a forgotten great, so how is there someone even more in that territory? For us, the third best ADC to ever grace the LCS is one that might surprise you, but one that in my mind sets the bar for entry into the hypothetical LCS Hall of Fame. Remember this guy? Canadian legend Jason WildTurtle Tran has been many things across his professional league career. A former solo laner turned AD carry, the ever-smiling bot laner has a career that outstrips almost everyone in the LCS. In fact, at one point, Turtle was the only player to have played in every split of LCS up until the summer of 2022, and at one point held the record for most LCS games played and still holds the record for most kills. Despite being a 4-time LCS champion, Turtle has seemingly faded into the background of the LCS's story, even though he's one of its most decorated players. But why? How can a player so good, with a Hall of Fame level of LCS success, go seemingly unnoticed among the discussion of its greatest players?
And you might be sitting there right now rolling your eyes and saying, yeah guys, of course I remember WildTurtle, everybody remembers him, why is this even a take? And to that I say, I think a lot of you remember a version of WildTurtle, but his true story is much more compelling than what the public narrative has become. And believe me, he's much more than just the afterthought he seems to be nowadays. To get the full picture of his career, we're going to need to start at the beginning and take a look at what he's done, where he's faltered, and ultimately discuss why, despite struggling toward the tail end of his career, we really shouldn't hold it against him. In what may be a shock to many TSM fans, WildTurtle actually started his career on Cloud9. No, not that Cloud9, this Cloud9. This first iteration of C9 was supposed to qualify for the inaugural season of the LCS easily, but that didn't happen, losing in a shock upset to Team Marn, a game we might have to talk about in a future video. Despite being a known quantity that was always at the top of the ladder, Turtle did not begin spring 2013 on a starting roster. In what has since become the most famous LCS substitution of all time, Turtle was brought in during Week 6 on short notice to replace TSM's longtime ADC Chaos, and he immediately did this.
WildTurtle at the back, just hitting one after the other. There's a double kill for him. Laudamonis goes in, that's going to feed him a triple kill. MIA strand, that's going to be a quadra kill. Can he get the pentakill? Front you, 1-on-1, it's going to be the pentakill for a beautiful play. WildTurtle stepping up. Chaos, you have something to answer right now because your replacement is doing a fantastic job.
Like Tom Brady coming in for Bledsoe, Turtle's statement was so powerful the bench Chaos never got the starting spot back, and TSM rode that momentum all the way to the first ever LCS title, dropping just 2 of the 14 games they played with Turtle. From superstar sub to now LCS champion, Turtle's AD play was consistently characterized by one particular maneuver, his fascination with his flash key. Turtle's usage of this summoner spell started as legend before evolving into a consistent facet of his play. It's like he just hated looking at the empty available spell slots so much that he would slam it on a cooldown just to see the numbers start ticking away again. Truthfully, Turtle understood something all great AD carries do, but at a time where the game was a lot younger and less understood. While range carries are fragile but powerful pieces, you don't do any damage if you can't fire at the enemy. So the most consistent strategy? Keep yourself in range, and for Turtle, he took that to heart. I believe this playstyle gives WildTurtle one of the most fitting names for any pro player. As an AD carry in Season 3, he would start the race slow and steady, scale up a little bit, and out of nowhere he would go wild and flash in. For better or worse.
Whoa, here they go. The hard engage, they're on to Edward. He's just exploding with
Look
their
at Turtle!
Turtle's flashed into the base to get the kill here, but he's now alone, and that's not a thresh on his team. He can't get over the wall, but the rest of the team flashes forward. They just want this engage. St. Vicious in the middle of the team.
Talk to me about the 5-1-6 score. This is for you, WildTurtle. That one came from an almighty flash into the base. What was going through your head?
I was getting really bored, and I usually play a lot of solo queue. So in solo queue, when the game gets really boring, I usually just flash and do crazy stuff. and that's, like, I don't know what to say about that.
Flash, in my books, has always been an aggressive ability. If I could take 2 flashes, I mean, who wouldn't? Flashing forward, to me, has always been like a way of saying, like, I got a big, and I'm gonna...
This aspect made Turtle's play exciting, unexpected, and both figuratively and literally flashy, but it also drew some criticism as well, especially later in his career when he was no longer quite as dominant. You could call Turtle a lot of things, but never a KDA player.
No, let's just go Baron. Take the free Baron. Take the free Baron.
Actually, I'm second go, guys.
Oh, okay.
Holy moly! That was a Turtle moment.
You can feel like Turtle getting a little bored. I don't know what to say about that.
Still, WildTurtle quickly racked up 3 LCS trophies in his time on TSM, eventually building them up to the point of the de facto best team in the LCS after overcoming C9 in the finals 2 splits in a row. So if he was so obviously successful and a core part of TSM, the best team in the league, who literally never missed a finals for over half a decade, why does history seemingly not remember Turtle as fondly? Well, a lot of this has to do with the obvious thing, the thing that still to this day is inseparable from the fabric of TSM, that Bjergsen guy. If you're somehow unfamiliar, Bjergsen is one of the greatest LCS players of all time, and he's the one responsible for the unbelievably consistent success this team had for so long. The captain, leader, mid laner extraordinaire could do it all across any era and any meta. Domestically, Bjergsen's biggest problem was that he was so consistently good that it got a bit boring for everyone else, because you kinda just expected him to win, get MVP, or be in the finals just about every split he sat for. Sometimes all 3 if you were lucky. Now, it's not fair to say that Turtle got carried by Bjergsen. He was absolutely an essential part of this team's success, but he never felt like the guy at TSM. Even though he'd been there longer, it was never Turtle's team. It was always the Bjergsen show. And it seemed like Turtle was always doomed to be the supporting act, the Phineas to Bjerg's Billie Eilish, if you will.
But it gets even worse. Not only was Turtle's prime partially overshadowed by Bjergsen, 2016 took that one step further as Turtle is replaced by the LCS GOAT and the best AD to ever grace the league, Doublelift. Granted, this is a Doublelift that has only just won his first trophy after years and years of the infamous Doublelift trophy case Reddit meme, but his aura as a player is undeniable. So when he gets the chance to partner up with Bjergsen to create a presumably unbeatable TSM, he takes it, and Turtle is pushed off to another team for the first time in his LCS career. Remarkably, he somehow lands at a team that is even better than his previous one, at least in the regular season. The original Immortals run, assembled with a somewhat ragtag squad of recent Korean LEC imports Rainover and Huni, off of their incredible Worlds run with Fnatic and a few North American notables including Turtle. These are not the anemic Immortals of the franchise era. This team went 17-1 in their first ever regular season, and again, Turtle is part of an extremely successful team with a chance to establish himself as the guy, and again it just feels like he's more role player than rockstar.
Key to beating Immortals: shut down Huni and Rainover as always.
Immortals face a struggling 9-9 TSM in the semifinals, giving Turtle a chance to make a statement against Bjergsen and Doublelift in what should be a cakewalk. But, let's just say the 2 GOATs had other plans.
I actually think Immortals is going to tilt a Fu in one game.
So just tilt him?
Just tilt him.
Alright.
Easy strat.
And they proceed to lay one of the biggest eggs in LCS history and get blasted 3-0. But hey guys, it's okay. Immortals still goes 16-2 in the summer regular season. One problem though, TSM goes 17-1. The super team is now fully online and it looks like Immortals might have already missed their window. And when the lights are brightest in the playoffs, they once again get bounced in the semifinals, this time by peak top die Impact. Back-to-back 3rd places in front of his home crowd in Canada would do nothing to soften the blow for Turtle, who would be overshadowed once again the very next day by his former team and unceremoniously kicked out of World's contention by Cloud9, a final humiliation that would cause IMT to blow up their roster for 2017. More surprisingly though, came his next play in the offseason, as he repeated the move that kickstarted his LCS career in the first place, unexpectedly jumping on TSM as a substitute AD carry.
Citing burnout after the Victor incident at Worlds, Doublelift took the spring of 2017 off to reset his mental and dip into streaming, and TSM suddenly found themselves needing an AD carry. Turning back to their old buddy, WildTurtle joined a hugely successful TSM and managed to pick up right where he left off as they pulled off yet another winning season, culminating in Turtle's first LCS title in years. While in most other situations, we think a run like this would be great for a player's career, still showing that you've got it despite changing teams, we think subbing in for Doublelift actually hurt Turtle's legacy. Look at it this way. If your primary criticism is that you're a role player that can only win on legendary teams, subbing in for what in 2017 looks like it might be the best team in LCS history is hardly a good way to beat those allegations. It gets even worse when the guy you're subbing in for Doublelift decides to pull a high and return mid-split to save an abysmal Team Liquid roster from relegations. And you say this ahead of playing each other in the last week of the regular season.
When people think about TSM's AD carry, for some people they think it's Doublelift, but I do think because I've been playing with TSM for so long, it should be me. When I see comments, I do feel a little irritated, but I also have an inner drive to play better than Doublelift. I don't think I'm holding this spot for Doublelift. To all the people that don't think I should be here, I want to prove them wrong.
Only to lose the game convincingly. Not a good look. Sure, TSM wins Spring Finals, but it was hardly convincing. It felt less like Turtle won that series for TSM, and more like Jensen lost it for C9. If Turtle was hoping that Path and Reginald would realize Doublelift wasn't essential to their success, he was mistaken. A disappointing showing at MSI, combined with a head-to-head meeting back in Week 9, left no doubt in the minds of TSM fans. They needed Doublelift back, and they got him, leaving Turtle out to dry without a team before summer, as TSM without him would go on to look even better and coast to a third straight LCS title.
Resets and Doublelift finds himself the third, the fourth, the fifth, the ace for TSM. 6 championships and 10 splits. They have never missed a final. They have never missed Worlds, and they are once again your North American champions.
After being left with nothing despite setting TSM up for the three-peat, Turtle changed teams once again, joining FlyQuest, a new organization full of old players. While Turtle reunited with his old buddies High and Lemon from C9, FlyQuest regressed in summer, going from 4th place to 7th and missing playoffs, leaving Turtle only 2 games away from relegations, just 1 split after winning his 4th title. Even though he won the title with TSM in 2017 spring, the 2018 offseason marked a shift in Turtle's career trajectory. Fair or not, he was tarred with the same brush as the rest of his teammates. Past his prime and no longer worth signing in the pre-franchising venture capital arms race by a top team that was serious about winning the title. Surprisingly, newcomers FlyQuest did make the cut for franchising, and Turtle stayed with them as the org built a new roster entirely around him, notably adding Korean legend Flame as their top laner and another discarded TSM player in Santorin. If he wanted to win another title, Turtle would have to do something he hadn't done before: take a middle-of-the-pack roster and elevate them to a championship caliber team. A challenge it looked like he wasn't quite ready for. Turtle's level had seemingly become stagnant. Even though he was a consistent force and not always the reason things went wrong, he also wasn't the reason they were winning games. Again, the role player accusations were seemingly vindicated as Turtle couldn't find success on any organization not named TSM. Cracks started to show in his play, and his trademark aggression started to feel like a relic of his former playstyle that was less of a calculated risk and more just a liability. While the roster had some improvement and some setbacks over its different iterations, the real change came when former Misfits players Power of Evil and Ignard joined the team.
And all of a sudden, this roster just seemed to click. FlyQuest finished Spring 2020 in a 3-way tie for second, and Turtle finally seemed like he had a team that could rival the storied organizations he'd been so successful on. FlyQuest and Turtle make it back to the LCS Finals for the first time in 3 years and the first time ever for the organization. FlyQuest got unceremoniously swept in the finals by Cloud9, but had finally proven that the org could put together a roster that could contend, and more importantly, it seemed like Turtle was getting back to his old self again. So shockingly, after splitting the first week of the summer season 1-1, Turtle got benched for the first time ever in his career, and his team won 3 straight games without him. For a player that had not only been in every single split of the LCS since it began, it felt like Turtle might finally be looking at the twilight of his career. After years of dwindling post-TSM, after finally being on a breakthrough roster that could not only shine in the regular season, but in the postseason as well, Turtle's benching felt like it might be the last time we'd see him again, ever. It's very possible Turtle's final split of the LCS would be finished on FlyQuest Academy, and after 7 years of playing in the league, I don't think many people would have blamed him. However, FlyQuest's hot streak would end abruptly, winning only 1 of their next 4 games, so after week 6 sitting at 5-5, Turtle is called back in again, just like he started things on TSM all those years ago. And all of a sudden, he's playing off the leash again, but in the best way possible. Whatever happened, the Wild has been put back in WildTurtle. FlyQuest dropped only a single game with Turtle back, finishing the regular season at 12-6.
And in the playoffs, FlyQuest made another run to the finals, leaving Turtle with yet another chance to change the narrative and stop TSM, Bjergsen, and Doublelift's miracle last ride through the lower bracket.
The turret will fall. Here they go to end the game. The last stand for Santorin against his old team. Turtle the same, but Doublelift has always been the better AD carry. Shows it here in the game as the Nexus falls. TSM claim LCS title number 7.
Unfortunately, FlyQuest squandered their attempted reverse sweep of TSM, falling just short in Game 5 of a series that famously endured a prolonged pause after the power in Turtle's apartment went out, leading to him having to rush across town to the Fly facility to finish out the series. Still, finishing second qualified the team to Worlds, sending Turtle back to the international stage for the first time in over 3 years. While that performance wasn't much to write home about, in part due to landing in the inevitable group of death, it felt like the Turtle of old was back, even managing to ruin top Esports' clean sheet in groups despite being out of the tournament by teaming up with Ignar's famous Blitzcrank. He'd finally proved that at least domestically, he still had the skill set, the hands, and now the veterancy to help lead an LCS team to a title, this time without the help of Bjergsen or TSM.
Sadly, none of Turtle's future rosters panned out the same way, joining failed project after failed project, and even though his playing career continued all the way until the end of 2023, he sits on Shopify Rebellion as a sub and streamer, at least temporarily retired, if not effectively, from professional play. So when we look back on Turtle's incredibly lengthy career, why is it that he never seemed to get the recognition you'd expect from someone who'd won the LCS 4 separate times?
Well, apart from having some less than stellar runs across a number of teams, something which no player in any sport is really immune from over a long enough time period, he was kind of a victim of his own success. Turtle never really seemed to have a prove-it arc, where he had to carry a new or unproven team to a title, and as a result, never really established himself as the guy. Not to mention that his prime coincided with so many other all-time greats. While his LCS debut was impressive and he racked up titles early on in his career, it felt like he could never really go toe-to-toe with Doublelift and Sneaky once they ramped up in power. A lot of how we think of the GOAT conversation in the LCS was solidified between 2016 and 2019. Those years have pretty well defined winners and losers, and Turtle was definitely on the outside looking in. Maybe if he'd been able to consistently give Doublelift a run for his money, or pick up the pieces with a good international run every now and then when TSM or TL faltered, he'd have a stronger legacy. But he didn't. That was Sneaky. Later on, as he regained his footing in the LCS, Turtle could seemingly never recapture the same magic he once had. Even with a late career resurgence on FlyQuest helping that team make back-to-back finals, he just couldn't get it done. It's fair to say that the conversation about Turtle's career would likely be very different if he'd been able to convert a championship on any team not named TSM. Either of his finals on FlyQuest ending with a victory would have Turtle seen in a very different light today. As history stands though, he didn't win, and while the tail end of his very long career isn't particularly impressive, the tenacity and longevity of his career should be seen as a strength and not a weakness. Especially considering that he went from having the likes of Xpecial, Lustboy, and Biofrost as his support to guys like Stunt, JJ, and Quan. It's safe to say that this probably didn't help his case.
So is it fair? Does an audit of Turtle's time in the LCS mean he should be remembered as just WildTurtle? No, we don't think so. He deserves a lot more credit for TSM's early wins, as there's a lot of revisionist history of 2014 summer and people just flat out ignoring 2013 spring. And sure, he languished on some really terrible failed projects on CLG and INT for years, but anyone with a career that long had those low periods, including Bjergsen, Sneaky, and yes, even Doublelift. His prime just happened to coincide with Doublelift's, and nobody should be called mediocre simply for the crime of being the third greatest ADC in LCS history. While Turtle was surrounded with and played against many of the LCS greats, and that does tarnish his legacy somewhat, no player with results this good should be excluded from the conversation. He'll never be the best ever, but if there is an LCS Hall of Fame, I think Turtle doesn't just deserve to be in it, I think he sets the bar for entry. Turtle has all the boxes ticked when it comes to being considered an LCS great, and it's time we start giving him that credit. Besides, he isn't officially retired yet, and you never know when another unexpected WildTurtle substitution could happen. Who knows? He might have one more magical run left in him. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you like this video, check out our last one on C9's miracle run through the 2015 gauntlet. Manny and I were overwhelmed by your support on that video, and if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell to get notified in 1 month when we upload our next video on the banger, was Fnatic versus OMG at the 2014 World Championship. Yes, that game, the one with like 17 different endings.